What is happening out there, Roto Scouts basketball fans? Welcome to Hangover Monday, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed the Super Bowl. Hope you didn't have to go into work today. It used to be a national holiday. Not for real, but you could easily take off this Monday after the Super Bowl. It's probably still the case with so many people who still work from home now and everything. Probably a pretty easy, light day for you out there, even if you are in the office. But hopefully things are going well to start your week. Congrats to the Philly fans in the chat, Philly fans out there in the world, my friends who are Philly fans. Solid W, not much to say about it. I mean, just pretty much dominant from end to end for the Eagles last night. Not the most fun game, but a solid W. Nice that the refs didn't really get involved, didn't really have their hand on the scale too much, which was good after all the criticism over the course of the regular season. But yeah, just utter dominance by the Eagles. A lot of buzz about the halftime show. Not a big into that scene, but it seemed like a pretty damn good halftime show to me. I was half paying attention. I had it on. I was certainly listening. Seemed pretty damn good to me. But a lot of people complaining, and then a lot of people super enthusiastic on the other side. Especially once I found out about some of the messaging and the backstory and everything. This, again, is just not the scene that I follow. Not that I really follow any scenes. But, yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Cujo's here. Cujo says, can't root for the Eagles, but happy for Jalen Hurts. He's a Texas kid. Yeah, same way. I mean, you guys know I'm a Giants fan, so it's very, very difficult for me to root for the Eagles. But I was kind of pulling for the Eagles. I'm a little bit just bored with the Chiefs at this point as far as winning multiple Super Bowls. I do, as I've said on this show, I do like Patrick Mahomes. I do like Travis Kelce. I don't have problems with the players. And I think everybody's going to come back to the fold, as I said the other day. In 10 years from now, when Mahomes retires with 8 rings, people are going to be, oh, the GOAT, we're going to miss him, blah, blah, blah. And the same people who hate him now will miss him. So whatever with that. But yeah, I was on the Eagles side, mostly for Saquon reasons. Really wanted to see Saquon win it. It went there, became the best free agent signing, at least in the history of Philadelphia. And quite possibly in the history of the NFL, at least, if not the history of free agency. Pretty damn good. So I was happy for Saquon. And I'm happy for Hurts. I don't dislike Jalen Hurts either. And you'd like to see a guy quiet the critics. He's I think my buddy Charlie was saying the other day, he's the first Eagles quarterback ever to lose and make it back to a Super Bowl. He was the first of another class of another group of players that was the first to ever lose and make it back in the last however many years or whatever. So really cool to see him, get over the hump there and answer the critics. But yeah, now that they've got it, now that they've done it, back to screw the Eagles mode. Forget those people. Next year, whole new story. Giants will have Jameis Winston at quarterback. That's my guess. We'll see. Anyway, we've got an interesting basketball slate. We've got 9 games on DK. We've got 10 games on FanDuel. A lot to go through. Yeah, Anthony Taylor says, I know you're 16 and Barkley gone. We're both old. If you truly listen to his art, he's nice. Listen to his art. Are you not sure what you mean on the second one there? Are you talking about Kendrick? Where you're saying listen? Not sure what you mean on the second half of that, but yeah, as I've been saying, I mean, the moment we hit the offseason, really the moment they re-signed Daniel Jones instead of re-upping Saquon 2 years ago, I knew that time was limited with Saquon and then that they weren't going to get him last year. As soon as the Eagles got him, I've been telling my buddy Charlie since the beginning, this time last year, or free agency last year, that the Eagles were going to win that Super Bowl, and they went and did it. So yeah, quite sick seeing him gone and how bad the Giants are. Just a historic, terrible decision as far as football goes. But anyway, it was okay. Yeah, again, I mean, I don't know. You could have played any of those songs for me yesterday before the show, and I wouldn't have been able to tell you whose they were or anything like that. It's just not my scene. But sounded really good to me as far as the quality of those songs. And always up for them, but yeah, they're not on my iPod. But maybe I should go investigate. Kendrick's top Rushmore for you? Okay. Yeah, see, my knowledge in that space goes, and again, it's good music. It's just not ever been something that's been like my main focus. I'm into the punk rock scene, and all of that would probably be my primary space. But I know enough that I could make like the ignorant man's Mount Rushmore. Like I know who should be on, or who you could get away with saying, should be on. But I don't have depth to say like my Mount Rushmore and really, really mean it. I'd just be kind of fudging. Trav took the day off, rolling up a fat joint while I analyzed the slate with my boy T McB. Sounds like a good Monday, Trav. Good stuff, gang. Let me get the Vegas board here. And away we go. All right. Leading things. So, again, 10 games on FanDuel. 9 on DraftKings. The Jazz are at the Lakers at the end of the night. We're supposed to have both Luka and LeBron in that game. They're both probable, so that'll be interesting. Obviously, no Mark Williams there. But that's the outlier game. DK lopped that off. That's a 10:30 start, which that'll be fun for those of us who have to sit here updating things. And we do have some staggered starts throughout the night. But first game up, San Antonio at Washington. It's kind of a good game environment. San Antonio's favored by 11 on the road against the terrible Wizards. We should see Wemby doing essentially whatever he wants. 237.5 point total. Pretty juicy there as far as a decent team with a lot of upside players going up against a terrible team with a fair amount of value coming through it. Definitely going to see, at worst, some pieces and parts. We'll see what the exposures look like in the sim results. But I do think that even if they don't come up naturally, it might be a spot where we can source some pivots and some guys that are like, all right, this should be an upside spot on either side of that one. Minnesota shorthanded and potentially more shorthanded. Both Conley and Ant are questionable for this one. Currently, Cleveland favored by 9.5 in a home game, 231 point total. Obviously, they're two teams where, for me, it's really just about the starters. Whoever you can get out of those, the starting five, if we've got Ant and Conley in for Minnesota. And then if we've got those two guys out, then we start talking about the Rob Dillinghams and the Nickeil Alexander-Walkers and so forth of the world. Cleveland just looks pretty steady. They'll have DeAndre Hunter coming off of the bench, presumably. I give him like 26 minutes. We'll see if he came up, if any of the odds and ends from Cleveland came up, but I really feel like it's going to be about the starting unit there. Atlanta at Orlando, meh kind of a game. 5.5 point total there, 5.5 point spread favoring Orlando in Orlando, 222 point total. It does look like we're getting some Paolo Banchero. I think some Franz Wagner should come up. They're both fairly highly projected. Trey on the other side, maybe we'll see some of him. Maybe we'll see some mix and match pieces coming from the newly configured Hawks. Boston at Miami. Some good players in this game, but it's kind of the low point of the day. But we do have major question marks on the Boston side. Both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are questionable and did not go through shoot-around this morning. Does that mean they just were out partying last night, watching the Super Bowl, having a good time? They're questionable, but they're going to end up playing? Could. Does that mean they're both going to sit? Could. Does that mean we get one, not the other? Also could. So this one could go any which way. We're going to want to watch the Celtics value as far as those guys not playing. We've already got Drew Holiday out, so that will thrust, presumably Derek White, KP, Al Horford, just out of the, the primary guys up the board a little bit, and then we'll see some of the values like the Cornets, the Sammy Hausers of the world creep up the board somewhat, and other downboard guys. So a lot to watch on the Boston side. And then Miami, just kind of It's a low total game. They're playing the Celtics. They're underdogs at home by 5.5 points. I really don't love anything from the Miami side, but if you're getting anything from the Tyler Hero Bam group, it's perfectly fine. Khalil Ware, there's a little bit of back and forth on the minutes. He's had short minutes the last two, but I gave him his due. I gave him the 30 that we've been seeing. It's a little bit maybe more fragile. It might be more like 26 to 28, but we'll see what happens. Charlotte at the Nets. Nets are favored by 3.5 in a home game. Takes a really bad team to put the Nets on the plus side of things, but this is just a 211.5 point total. We'll get some odds and ends for sure. Not sure exactly how much it's going to come up as far as our distributions go. Let's see. We'll cheat a little bit here. Yeah, some Nick Smith is coming up on DK. Some Yusuf Nurkic is definitely coming up on DK. A little bit of a question mark around the big man minutes and what they're going to look like there. Mark Williams is not live to play tonight. I gave Nurk 22, and then I gave Diabate 22, and we'll just see how that falls right now. But Nurk is coming up at 3,900 on DraftKings. It looks like neither him nor Nick Smith came up at all on the FanDuel slate, which is good. It's really just those pieces that look like they're landing at all. Continuing on through here. Golden State, Milwaukee. Kind of interesting. No Milwaukee on the Giannis side. Dame is questionable. We got Bobby Portis moved to the bench and playing off the bench yesterday, but he played the entire fourth quarter and a big chunk of the second half of the third quarter. I gave him back his typical minutes that we've been seeing, but I do think could be a little bit of a downturn to the minutes again. I ended up playing 26, even with that closing run. But I'm going right back there, even if he's off the bench. He's obviously coming up like a monster piece on the board that you guys can see there. And then a lot of pieces, I think, from Golden State are going to look fairly appealing here. 230.5 point total. Golden State favored by 7 on the road. The Pellies at the Thunder. The Thunder are favored by 17 in a home game, and the Pelicans are missing essentially everyone. 234.5 point total in this one. Juicy spot as far as that total, that point spread. Great matchup on the OKC side as far as just being able to annihilate New Orleans without most of their NBA players. It's going to be an ugly one, but I'm sure we'll see some pieces come up out of it. A close spread. The Mavs are 1-point favorites over Sacramento in a home game in Dallas. No Anthony Davis. If you missed it, AD is going to be out a month, probably more. Just karma for dealing Luka Doncic. 236.5 point total. Definitely going to see some pieces on both sides of this one. That nice tight rotation from the Kings where everybody plays a ton of minutes up at the top looks pretty good. And then the Kyries of the world on the Dallas side, if nothing else, will come up a little bit. Portland at Denver. This is the last one on the DK slate. Denver favored by 9.5 in a home game, 229.5 point total. MPJ is questionable if I'm remembering correctly. I'm sure we'll see some Jokic come through. I'm sure we'll see a little bit of some of the pieces and parts on the Denver side. Not sure how much Portland will get to, but that'll be an interesting one to look for. It's just kind of a lukewarm type total, and Denver should handle their business in Denver. And then the final game, the one that's on the FanDuel slate that I alluded to before, 235.5 point total. Lakers favored by 12 in a home game against the terrible Jazz. As long as we've got Luka and LeBron out there, I think you could take shares of either one of those guys to round out your evening on FanDuel without problem. It's two of the best players in the entire league. So outside of that, maybe some pieces and parts off the Utah side. It's weird. Everybody from Utah is just kind of there today. Where we've been dealing with, they've been one of like the Civil War battlefield hospitals of the NBA this year. So a weird day on the Utah side. Getting into some of the insies outsies. Javier, what's going on, buddy? Javier says, hey, Terry, for your quarterly package, if I cancel after 3 months, do I only pay the initial $67.50? Yeah, it's quarterly. It's every 3 months it's going to renew, bud. So if you cancel before the renewal, you will not be charged for any additional time until you resubscribe. Going to be traveling for not much NBA, NHL after the next 3 months, it sounds like, for Javier. Yeah, buddy, we'll miss you. But if you close out the quarterly, like right now, before it renews, you will not be charged for the next quarter. You will have paid for whatever your term is. But if you need anything, hit me up. If you are going away tomorrow and you got charged a renewal last week that you're not going to use, DM me or shoot me a note on Twitter, by email, whatever. And I'll help you out with that. I'll give you back your money. I mean, I'm not going to charge you for stuff you're not going to use. If anybody out there is not in our Discord, and that's where I mean, as far as DMing me there or on Twitter is fine. But here's a link to the Discord if anybody's not in there. But that brings me to the next point before we dive into the ins and outs. Check out rotoscouts.com. The plan that Javier's referring to, under $1 a day, gave him access to all of NBA, NFL, and NHL for the last 3 months when he bought it. That is our least expensive per day plan, but every single plan is under $1 a day, whether it's quarterly, monthly, or weekly. So for under $7, you can get through the next week of projections. Every NBA main slate. There is no NHL going on right now. I'll see if they have slates for the, I almost called it the Four Corners. They're doing a Four Nations tournament in lieu of an All-Star game this year. So I'll see what's going on with that, but that's over the next 8 days. So you're basically on an NBA only plan for the next week. But when everything's going live, everything's included for the same price. Under $1 a day gives you access to all of it. NBA, NHL, MLB right around the corner. And then NFL when it starts back up. We're at the tail end of the NFL season. So check that out. And the sims that we're looking at, that we'll be looking at in a sec, run at acemine.io. Our sim and optimization partners. Promo code RotoScouts all in caps over there. Gets you 20% off your first month. Now let's talk about who's playing and who's not. Probables. Mohamed Gee got called back from the G League. He's available. Trae Young is probable. Keyshawn George is available. So is Nikola Jovic. So is Nick Claxton. Brooke Lopez, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Dalton Knecht, and Austin Reeves are all probable. Obviously, again, some big names to watch for the Lakers side. If some of those guys don't end up playing, there will be value created in that Lakers game because it's a decent enough total. Questionables. Couple key ones. Actually, throughout, there's key ones. Questionables: Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Max Strus, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Tyler Hero, Moussa Diabate, Josh Green, Nick Smith, Isaiah Wong, D'Angelo Russell, Steph Curry, Pat Connaughton, Damian Lillard, Max Christie, Dante Exum, PJ Washington, Jeremy Grant, Chris Murray, Robert Williams III, and Michael Porter Jr. Outs, a lot of these. Kobe Buffkin, Jalen Johnson, Daquan Plowden's in the G League. Jalen Suggs is doubtful. Mo Wagner is out. Dante DiVincenzo, Julius Randle, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, Charles Bassey, Sadiq Bey, Anthony Gill, Chris Middleton, Alex Sarr, Marcus Smart, Drew Holiday, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Drew Smith, Trey Mann, Brandon Miller, Josh Okogie, Grant Williams. Mark Williams is not back with the team yet. Bojan Bogdanovic, Noah Clowney, Max Lewis, D'Anthony Melton, Cam Thomas, Tariq Whitehead, Jonathan Kuminga, Giannis is out, Brandon Boston, Bruce Brown, Herb Jones, CJ McCollum. This is all the Pellies that are missing, by the way. Brandon Boston, Bruce Brown, Herb Jones, CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, Kelly Olynyk. Then we get to Ousmane Dieng, Isaiah Joe, AJ Mitchell, all out for OKC. Nikola Topic. I don't know why I listed him. He's been out all year. Kaysen Wallace is out. Devin Carter's in the G League. Anthony Davis is out and will be. Derek Lively, Caleb Martin, Dwight Powell, Sidy Sissoko's in the G League. I just listed him because he's been bouncing all over the league, so I wanted to make sure people knew he wasn't playing tonight. Matty Thybulle, Vlatko Konchar, Peyton Watson, Russ Westbrook, Taylor Hendrick, KJ Martin, Colin Sexton. Bronny James is doubtful. Moxie Kleba is out. Cam Reddish is out, not back with the Lakers yet, and Christian Wood is out. Weird one with Cam Reddish, by the way. Just be aware. I think he is listed still with Charlotte on the DK salaries. Not that he's projected, not that anybody in their right mind should be projecting him today, but just be aware that I do think he's got a DK salary today, even though he's not on Charlotte anymore. He was part of that trade that got nullified. That's your ins and your outs. So let's get into this thing. So, separate boards, got it cut by FanDuel positioning, but we're sorted by, as usual, DK exposures. So just looking at the late game at the top of the board just real quick. LeBron came up a decent amount, 33% higher than the field. We really didn't get much Luka. We really didn't get much Austin Reeves. We did get some John Collins at 16%. We got a few shares of Jordan Clarkson, whose minutes have been up lately. Mix and match shares on basically anybody else. The one guy that's interesting to talk about, I think, is if you want to grab more Luka Doncic, do so. There's nothing wrong with that. 10-8 in his Lakers debut. He's a little bit pricey relative to a lot of the rest of the slate. LeBron, for example, $300 cheaper. Obviously different positioning, but you get the multi-position out of LeBron. Between the two, I think I prefer LeBron a little bit here. I've got him projected for a couple more minutes just because Luka is also, has been banged up and not playing. So I figure the range is more like 28 to 32 on Luka, where LeBron's just got his usual range. But other than those guys, there's nobody really concerning or critical to talk about from that late game. We'll refer to them as we go. So actually, I probably can just cut by DraftKings position. Let me do that. Since it's just the one game, it's not really gonna matter. So we'll just go by DK positioning. Come on. There we go. So, Nick Smith. This is a radically different option across sites. On DraftKings, he's 4,000 shooting guard and small forward eligible, 5.88 value score, well above our 5.5 threshold, and he got into 45% of lineups at those positions. On FanDuel for 52, shooting guard only, he's just a 4.31 value. We don't want him at all. Level with the field at exactly 0%. He's also questionable to play. Just an ugly, ugly spot overall. Not a good per minute player. I will say that among the bad per minute players, he's at least got decent usage in the 19.8% range, 20% last year. So he's one of the higher usage bad performers on the slate. He's not, for example, these types. KCP at 0.63 per minute on 12.6% usage. AJ Green, similar 0.63 on 13.1 and similar numbers last year. So you get maybe the opportunity, scoring-wise, to do a little bit with Nick Smith, but it's still low end. The results are not good, even though he's got a few more shots in his pocket. Little bit of facilitation, but just a 14.9% assist rate. The true shooting's at 51.8%. This is not a good player. This is a cheap player. So it's really minutes over price with that one. Jose Alvarado, with all those missing pieces, I do think is going to be pretty interesting. 4,900 point guard only on the FanDuel slate, cheaper than on DK. We got an absolute ton of them. He's a 5.67 value over there. He's our most valuable guard option. 69.3%, gently above the field on the FanDuel slate. He's going to be popular, but he is going to play probably more minutes than I gave him. I've got him at 30, and he looks fantastic. The only thing really working against Alvarado here is the matchup against OKC. That's just brutal. It's going to be a terrible spot to have some of these Pelicans. But they're going to come up. I mean, Hawkins a couple spots later for cheap looks pretty decent on really both sites. So I think we're going to be getting Pellies. SGA is going to come up a little bit on the DraftKings board. Very different prices on SGA, but he's going to look tremendous by virtue of playing the Pelicans and by virtue of just being one of the very best players in the entire NBA and the best per minute guys on the entire slate. But yeah, Alvarado, Hawkins, both coming up a little bit. Either way with either of those guys, if you've got both of those guys, they're both cheap enough that it doesn't really matter. The positions are offset. You can absolutely have both of those guys in your lineups. For 5,000 on DK, we got Alvarado level with the field. You're talking about essentially a point per minute, a little bit less technically for the season, and then I gave him a little bit of a haircut. So you can see in 30 minutes, we're under a point per minute on that projection, and he's still coming up really strong. So that's accounting for the OKC matchup. It's accounting for tonight's Vegas environment. SGA, just a little cheap on the DraftKings slate. 10-8. That's a great price for SGA. Against the Pelicans? It seems like a mistake almost. That price is so good. It's not that it's cheap, but it's very cheap for him. 32.67% above the field, playing at 1.58 for the season per minute. No reason not to love the SGA play over here. He is technically short of the value mark, but as we've talked about a bunch of times, it just doesn't matter when you're on the star tier. They don't need to be at that 5.5. It'd be nice if he is, but doesn't need it. On FanDuel at 4.72, we're further from the value mark. We're getting him at 11.6 over there. That is a much different price. He still made his way into 4% of lineups. You can see that's essentially level with the field. So if you want to grab a few more shares and build a little bit of a plus position, I think it's okay. But it's just not as aggressively good as it is on the DraftKings slate, where he's just a little underpriced. Hawkins is another decent usage but low-end performer as far as a per minute. He and Nick Smith are very, very similar in that regard. 0.73 on 18.8% usage out of Hawkins last year, 20.5% usage this year, 0.74. Basically the same guy. So again, you do get at least the little tickle of opportunity with those guys with a few more shots. Podziemski's going to look pretty good. 5,600 on FanDuel. We got him a little bit, 9.3%, but just 4,900 with both guard spots on DraftKings, 30+%. That's level with the field, but he's above our value threshold, 5.54. Very solid value mark. I'm happy to be, I think, hand in hand with the field on that one. Just looking highly, highly playable. That's an appealing game. He played 29 in the last game. The range is probably 28 to 30, 31. And he put up 35 fantasy points, essentially. 34.5 and 29-1. For the season, we're playing at 0.92 on DraftKings, 0.91 on FanDuel, 0.88 last year. Tonight's game, I've got him 5/100ths of a point higher, 0.05. It's pretty decent. Pretty decent spot for them. They are, let's see, about 4.5 points above the average implied team total for the slate. In other words, if you average that isn't in other words, that's saying the exact same thing, just the other way around. I think you guys understand what I'm saying. Your implied team high is 125.5 today. 104 is the implied low. That's Charlotte. Charlotte at 104. Brooklyn at 107.5. On the high side, the 125.5 for OKC is the high. So again, more reason to just potentially buy in on SGA. Joker's excited about it. Come here. What are you doing? Go lay down, Dum-Dum. The price is just solid on Podziemski. That's a really good price. You can see he's above the value threshold. We've got a lot of options there, though. In addition to the guys above him, we've also got a couple spots down. Buddy coming out of the same group. Another guy whose minutes are up a little bit. Steph, not far off the mark at 5.3 from the higher tier at 8,700. It's another player. That's a really good price to find Steph Curry. Under 9,000 on the FanDuel slate. We're not getting him quite as much. But just feels nice to get a 1.30 per minute player for 8,700. That's not a bad price. You get a 5.23 value, but we're back up over 5.5 at 3,200 for Antonio Reeves. Reeves is getting a little bit of popularity just on a presumption of minutes. I give him 23. Just with all their guards out, I would expect that there's going to be some time for him. It's 0.76 per minute on DK in his 9.5 minutes, his 21 games so far this season. Last time out, played 14.5, put up a 7.2. That's a little bit underperformance from a guy who already doesn't perform great. I don't have a ton of faith in this one, but he's just riding that super cheap price on DraftKings, multi-guard eligible. 5.66 on the value scale does get him into 12% of our lineups, but that's below the field. That's given not quite half the field, but I think closing in on half of where the field was. On FanDuel, he's uniquely cheap at 36. That's getting down toward the minimum on FanDuel, where DK just puts more guys in that range. So anybody's going to be automatically appealing at 36 once they've got, at least with a respectable amount of time and rate. That's getting him into 27% of FanDuel lineups. It's a lot, but he's over our value threshold. Low faith play, but one that is mathing out correctly, at least at this point. Keep an eye on your minutes. If you see him dip below 20, though, you're not going to want it. As soon as this starts going down, let's say we take 2 minutes off of him. Look how far that value board drops. So that's significant, and that's the difference of. Took a point and a half away. That's 2 minutes. So if he goes from 23 to 21 minutes, you almost don't want him. That's how big a difference that becomes. Nuke says, have to earn these subs, bud. Who do you got as some top optimals? The entire show is talking about the best plays of the slate, buddy. Like, what do you think I'm talking about right now? The percentages of which we got these guys in our top 150 lineups are displayed on the screen in front of you. So, like, I'm trying to earn that sub from you, buddy. I'm here pretty much every day. I will be here literally every day during the week for baseball season. If I miss a baseball show, something went haywire, or I'm just like away or something like that. But we'll be here for most of it. Every now and then we've been missing these NBA shows just because it gets overwhelming trying to keep up with the changes. So Nuke, as I'm going through, just follow the percentages, follow the dance. Follow the percentages, follow what I'm talking about, and if you have specific questions along the way, throw them in. Questions definitely help drive the conversation. Otherwise, a lot of it's just me reading numbers. Let's see. Where else we got to go? Jordan Poole. I can see a path to success for Poole in this matchup against San Antonio. But We're getting him less than the field, and this is typically where I would like to be on Jordan Poole. Call it bias, call it low faith, call it whatever you want, but we are below the value mark. There's plenty of justification in the math for just not really being there. It's played at 1.10 FanDuel, 1.16 on DK. That's like right where I've got him for this one. If I'm going to this game, I would prefer to get to the San Antonio side. Just doesn't look like we're getting a lot of their guards either. Vassell, Fox, Chris Paul, Stephon Castle all right down here. Actually, they do looks like we're getting some Castle on FanDuel. None of those guys really mix and match guys on DK. So among the guards, it does look like Poole, Carrington are coming up more than the San Antonio side, but neither one of those guys is nearly a priority. They do look better on DraftKings, closer to the value mark. Carrington, 10% on FanDuel's fine, 12% on DraftKings, fine. Below the field on both of those options, though. I think I breezed past Buddy. But again, the minutes have been up a little bit. Played 27.5 in the most recent game. Put up a 30.5 on the FanDuel scale. All right, go lie down, pal. Last few for Buddy, 28, 35, 31. I think we're all in the same bucket with Buddy Hield in that we don't necessarily, I don't think to a man, really trust him. But at 48, 49, it's just kind of a minutes, rates, time thing where just take the name off the back of the jersey, and that's looking like a good spot, especially on FanDuel for the 49. We're getting him 42% of the time. He's got eligibility at both guard spots. Just looking really good. Steph on FanDuel is the one spot between those four for him and Buddy that we didn't really get. 8,900, we got him 6% below the field. He's a little bit off the mark as far as our looking for 5 value score there. On DraftKings, we did get him 18% of the time. He's at 5.30 when we want 5.5, but for 200 cheaper, he's more functional. I don't mind this. I think it's appropriate to have the position. I could argue for a little bit more, but then I think we're leveling back to the field, so better to have the position than not. On Buddy, where it's just a cheap salary and above the value threshold, being with the field at 20 is fine. No multi-position on Buddy on DraftKings, unfortunately, but you've obviously got the flexible spots. Gary Trent looking like a mix and match piece on both sites. 7% on FanDuel, 10% below the field on DraftKings. He's cheap. He's at worst a movable part with fairly reliable upper 20s minutes. But not looking mandatory. Low per minute guy. I'm kind of surprised that we didn't get a little bit more Trey Murphy than this. 7% FanDuel level with the field, 9% DraftKings level with the field. Just for the fact that they're so shorthanded, I have him at 36 minutes. I have him doing a lot of the heavy lifting for this team, and he's been good this year, 1.07 FanDuel, 1.09 DraftKings. But the price has been raised to the point where even in a somewhat unique game, between the price and the matchup against OKC, it's really not landing for him. You can see it in the value marks, 4.72 FanDuel, 4.9 for DraftKings. That's with a 40-point projection on both sites. So Trey's got his work cut out for him to make value. I think he's playable, and especially because there's just so many guys missing for New Orleans. But it's not an easy path to success. So I don't think he's critical. If you have a little bit more, I don't even want to say that. I think you want to be a little bit lighter than the field. You can be close, have a few shares, but I think you want to be giving the field back some of this, and that's where we landed. I was gonna say since he's low owned overall anyway, he is somebody maybe worth considering goosing the shares a little and getting, but that would put us either at or slightly above the field on kind of a mismatched price. I don't love it. I think we're where we belong. Moses Moody is in the same territory on the DraftKings slate at 3,800. Moody just 22 the last time out, 32 the game before that, but that was no Jimmy and a number of other missing pieces. I think we're in the correct territory. I've got him at 22 minutes. Last time out, he played nearly 22 minutes. He put up 7. That's a monster performance. He's fine. You can take him or leave him on DraftKings, 5.07 value. The point guard small forward positioning is good. I like that eligibility at multiple spots, but he's not critical. Kyrie's a different play across sites. 300 cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. So on FanDuel, we're getting him above the value threshold. On DraftKings, he's at a decent score, but we're below where we want. 36% FanDuel exposure. That's not bad. I don't mind that being above the field, having a little bit of a plus position there on a really, really cheap Kyrie with obviously plenty to do. Power chimes in. ESPN beat writer Dave, somebody said the McMean Man? McMeanaman? I like McMean Man. Said the Lakers are going to have Luka play a smart execution of minutes. So, yeah, he didn't really come up anyway. No, he's not sorted on the board because I cut my DraftKings positioning. I forgot. We were getting him like 1%, I think, on FanDuel Power. And if I knock him down, that's with 30. I want to say I gave him 30. Might be 32. Either way, if you knock him down, that just goes away. I did give him 32. So, yeah, if I take that down, which it sounds like if I take that to like 28, that's going to take Luka almost entirely off the board. I would not expect to get much of him. Nuke responded before, a lot of weed being smoked. I didn't realize it was on the screen. So, yeah, for anybody unfamiliar, good stuff, buddy. For anybody unfamiliar, what you want to be looking at on the screen. FanDuel's on the left where it's blue here, and DK's on the right where it's green over here, except for that one, which is blue for some reason. This is our public ownership, right? So the public ownership, like our relative position to where the public ownership as projected by a different site, our position is in this column. So if you're on DK, it's column AA that you want to be looking at there as far as our position versus the field. And then our exposure in our top 150 lineups, get that box to go away. Our exposure in our top 150 lineups is in this AC column. And that is a good comp for optimal rates. It's going to tell you not exactly how many times the guy appeared in the best overall lineup, but I think it's a more important number as far as what we talk about in developing a portfolio of lineups, whether that's one lineup that can inform anyway, or whether it's 5 lineups, 20 lineups, 150 lineups. I think talking about the distributions is more important than talking about just the number of times that guy was in the just pure balls out winning lineup. And they're very similar numbers. Like this would reflect the top optimal guys. It also gives you an idea where you want to be against the field. Same thing on FanDuel. Column K is your top 150. Column I is your top relative position to the field. And then just in the middle, we've got statistical stuff. This is FanDuel points per minute. It probably should be over there, but whatever. This is 2024 usage, 2023 usage and per minute on a FanDuel scale. Last game. Minutes, FanDuel points. This is just season-long games and minutes. On DraftKings, this is your point per minute, and then you've got stats, true shooting, assist rate, rebounding rate over there. There's more over here that we go to at times. Traditional back of the basketball card stats, points, rebounds, assists per game. Threes, made an attempted three-point shooting rate, and then just your prices and stuff like that over there. Anywho, Power says, my guess on Gary Trent is the algorithm is taking into account his normal PPM. He has been going off lately. I don't understand why. Oh, that's all right. I don't understand why Trent isn't more expensive. 2 straight games of great minutes and monster fantasy games, and he got cheaper. Where is he? Did he get cheaper? I didn't clock that he's getting cheaper. But yeah, I think Power nails it. It's just, it's a guy that we've got a little bit of history with. He's .80 last year. Like he has been better than he's been this year over time. So you could easily make the argument that he could see a little bit more. He did put up a 41.7 in 33 minutes in the last game. That was Milwaukee. Yeah, 33 in that one, but the 4 before that one, 29, 26, 20, and 16. So I don't think it's necessarily more than like the 28 as an expectation going forward that I gave him. And you've had no Giannis for 4 straight. You had no Pat Connaughton grabbing a couple extra bench minutes there. Connaughton had played 27 and 21 in the first 2 games that Giannis missed, but he's normally 5 to 8 minutes a night, if that. But there's just a little bit of an uptick in opportunity there with the short bench in that most recent game where he went 33. So I think the expectation should still be conservatively, 26, 28 as a range. And then the projection, is going to be, let's see, rate-wise. So rate-wise this year, 0.72 per minute on the DraftKings scale, 0.69 per minute on FanDuel. But again, did have a little bit better of a number last year on a little bit more opportunity. For today, I've got him at 0.74 in the model. You could argue for I guess you could make a fair argument up to like 0.80 or 0.81, the number where he was playing at last year. But you'd kind of be going out on a limb. If you wanted that, it would essentially just add almost directly 2 fantasy points to his projection. So if you're looking to play with the Gary Trent exposures and get more of them, just give him 1-2 fantasy points here, and you'll probably get a little bit more. And it would be more like you're rostering this version of Gary Trent than this year's version. That's all. And that's what a lot of this boils down to. You change these guys by 1-2 points, you're accounting for a decent number in the per minute range, and it will radically sometimes change these exposures. So bear in mind, a lot of times we're talking about minor changes in minor decimals. We're talking about a bucket. Okay, so we went up 200 on DK, it sounds like. And then on FanDuel, it sounds like he went down from 43 to 42. Yeah, they're both doing weird stuff, though, Power. Power saying FanDuel does weird stuff. I mean, didn't DraftKings have Kyle Kuzma at 3,800 yesterday? So let's not just talk about FanDuel doing weird stuff. Kuzma was correctly priced today, or more correctly priced on DK today. Where are we at here? Got sidetracked by the Gary Trent conversation. Some Dame, I think, is perfectly fine with the level that Dame's been playing at. We got less than the field at 5% on DraftKings. He's 92, 9,500. The price is up, kind of in line with the play, but the spot with no Giannis is definitely enhanced a little bit. That's all accounted for here. I do think you could grab a few more shares while staying below the field. Maybe we make this more like a orange angled arrow rather than a straight down red arrow. Field's probably in like the 15-18% range there, maybe over 20. So if you're at 10, maybe even 12, I think you're fine. But the further you take it down, the more leverage you gain, obviously, in other spots. On the FanDuel slate, just 2%. You can do basically anything you want. More, you can zero it out if you need to. And bear in mind, Dame might not play. But that's where the 36-minute projection is just bouncing off the price a little. 15% of Christian Brown on the FanDuel slate, I think, is fair. 6,300. He's got multi-position eligibility at shooting guard and small forward. On DraftKings at 61, we got him less. I think that's mostly a product by having some of these guys going through those positions in higher proportions. If you take away some of those values, or if you consider him a rotational piece for some of those spots at a different price, then I think it would be fair to have more. There's nothing wrong with the Christian Brown play. He's only a 4.87 value on DraftKings, but he's only a 4.74 on FanDuel. I think there's just more opportunity for this price at these positions, and rate and everything included, to get into just more lineups on FanDuel. By virtue of how many guys go through those spots on DraftKings, it's a little different. Tighter slate on DK, too. Brogdon, no thank you. 5% on FanDuel for 5,100. I don't need that really at all. 4,800 on DraftKings. We got the same 5%. If you have it, fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's only a 22-minute projection. Could see 24, maybe. Could give you around a point per minute, maybe. But even then, we've got so many other value-ish kind of options at cheaper prices that I don't want to get bogged down with Malcolm Brogdon. Don't get bogged with Brogd. Power say, yeah, DK does make mistakes, but let's be real, FanDuel does it significantly more often, especially for MLB. I actually happen to think the FanDuel's pricing has been way better than DraftKings has this year. As far as NBA. For MLB, I don't know that I agree. I think DraftKings messes up more. I really do. I think FanDuel's actually a little tighter if you really follow it day to day. At least for the last year. I know reputation-wise, and maybe in years past there were more, but for like the last year or so, I have felt that FanDuel's running a better game as far as how the pricing should be. Now, that could be interpreted differently if you think of, I want looser pricing. I want the ability to get whoever I can get. That's kind of what DraftKings has been offering for a lot of the NBA year. And it's kind of true about this slate. And that reflects what I was just saying about why we're not getting a lot of Christian Brown on the DraftKings slate, because there are so many super cheap options on this slate. FanDuel runs a tighter ship. Keeps it it's supposed to be difficult to get everybody you want in a lineup, to me. And FanDuel's pricing is more reflective of that, at least like from where they start. Where they finish a day, once we get to lock, you can't control. But where they start, I feel like FanDuel is usually more on point than DraftKings. I mean, I mostly only play on FanDuel Power, so yeah, I do more of my winning on FanDuel because that's where I play. But yeah. Look, there are stupid mistakes like that happen from time to time when you get those mid-price guys that have been out or whatever, and they don't adjust for when they come back. Sure, those things slip through from time to time. But as far as the day-to-day, who's got the more, where the pricing should be, I really do think it's FanDuel. Maybe I'm out on a limb. I don't know. DraftKings single game contest. Oh, those are two totally different conversations, dude. DraftKings is the bigger DFS market space. Overall, I believe FanDuel has the higher market share, the higher value number, I think, based on their book. But on the DFS side, yeah, DraftKings is indisputably the DFS titan. So, Tamani Kamara. 22% FanDuel, that's not bad. Just shy of our value mark. Shooting guard and small forward eligible. Been playing up the 0.77 per minute that we've seen for the full season. He's been more in the, I believe it was 0.87, somewhere in that territory range over recent games. So decent opportunity for him, and the price is right at 58 for the FanDuel slate. On DraftKings, we got him 3% of the time. We're below the field over there. He's just a 4.71 because DraftKings has him priced up a little bit to the conversation that we were just having. DraftKings does have him a little bit more aggressive. FanDuel, they're letting you get to him a little bit more. But that's an interesting one, too, because you could say that this kind of creates a trappy spot on FanDuel for those who aren't paying attention, where DraftKings might be boxing you out of making that mistake a little bit. So it also depends on how you consider those prices. Not that they're actually going in there and designing these things into the slate, but to me, that gets interesting. And maybe it's a factor of just like how much I talk about these slates and these unique spots. This could be a little bit of a trap because you got to give him full credit for what he's been doing lately to be able to really justify that kind of exposure. Not a great environment for them going into Denver. But it's there at that price and at his current levels of production. Stephon Castle going up against Washington, one of the better pieces coming out of the San Antonio side. 34% on FanDuel, 5,300 point guard and shooting guard eligible. Between the two, especially if we can get Castle to the 30-minute mark, I've got him at 27 right now. Played 29 and a half in their last game. If we can get, even if we're getting 28, 29, every additional minute we get starts looking better and better. These two are offset minutes-wise, but not all that much exposure. Or actually, we're getting more Castle for the cheaper price. And I think I would say I prefer maybe pressing down on this a little bit to go into this, playing in Denver. I do like the Stephon Castle play a little bit more. And I'm glad to see it coming up with the common shooting guard spot. On DraftKings, Castle, same deal. 4.99 is 5,400 over there. Point guard and shooting guard eligible. We just don't need them at the 4.99 value with all these 5+ guys on the board. I think you can get them a little bit more than that 3%. If you're level with the field around 10, you're probably fine. But it's not something I would aggressively pursue either. Tyler Hero, mix and match across sites. Anthony Simons, D'Lo, mix and match if he plays. Onesie, twosie shares of all these guys. Some good players in here. If Ant plays, he's playable because he's very, very good. And the price is not offensive at 98.97 across sites, but it's a bad game environment for Cleveland, for Minnesota. Going up against Cleveland is not going to do him any favors here, and that's if he plays. So I think onesie, twosie shares of Ant is fine. That said, that does give you a star caliber player who, let's face it, he's going to have a big day if they're going to win and overcome that Vegas line. So with him owned by the public in the low single digits, that is somebody who will at least file away as a, hey, I can grab Ant at low ownership for that 98, spare 98 that I've got, that spare 97 that I've got. Any given share of Ant in any given lineup, perfectly fine. Jamal Murray, mix and match piece. We didn't get him on FanDuel. We got him in 1% of lineups on DraftKings at 81. Just a little bit priced up. I think he's fine, but not nearly a priority. He's like on the bottom of borderline playable, I guess. We got 11% of Zach LaVine on the FanDuel slate for just 7,300, small forward and shooting guard eligible. 7,500 on DraftKings, barely came up. It's a different price play across sites, but I'm kind of... There's got to be just a gap of guys going through that small forward shooting guard position. Because like all the sub 5 value we got on Kamara at 58, and then we're getting a 4.60 value score going through that at 73. That's below the field. I'm kind of surprised it came up even that heavy at a 4.6 value. On DraftKings, we really don't need LaVine. You can have him, he's fine, but not seeing a ton of upside. And that's going to be difficult. Just all that I mentioned it early, the 7-8 guys, or probably more 6 or 7 guys who play 30+ minutes for San Antonio or Sacramento, stumbling all over this one. It makes it a little difficult to identify, which one of those guys is in a unique spot tonight, which one of those guys is going to really stand out. So LaVine's playable, but mix and match. LaMelo going up against Brooklyn. This is the worst game environment on the slate. Keep in mind, but I would put him in the same bucket as Ant, where any given share of LaMelo against a pushover opponent, perfectly fine to have. It's just he's banged up. He's maybe going to come up shy of those minutes, especially if they're beating Brooklyn handily. That said, Brooklyn is favored in that game. So I think a few shares of LaMelo is fine. Any given lineup is fine. Jaylen Brown, questionable to play. If he's out there, he's in is who he is spot. You can have some shares. We got him 1.3 on FanDuel, 0.67 on DraftKings. Darius Garland, not really coming up. Trey, not really coming up. Donovan Mitchell, not really coming up. A lot of good players that we did not get to. So you've got some options for pivots. Any given share of Spide is fine. Any given share of Trey is fine. Any given share of Darius Garland is totally fine. Cole Anthony, Peyton Pritchard, Scoot Henderson. Pritchard's an interesting one who I didn't mention at the beginning of the show. If you get no Tatum and Brown. Right now I've got him at 30 minutes, but we would definitely see an uptick. Probably picks up a couple minutes if those guys don't play, and certainly would see an uptick in rate if those guys don't play is my expectation. I haven't looked at it, but I'm sure. Scoot, no thank you. Cole Anthony, Shaden Sharp, these are all like the same guy. Zaire Williams, no. None of these guys are coming up at all on DraftKings. We do have an outlier, Keon Ellis. I guess that's our Sacramento guy. 5.28 value on FanDuel. That's in 28 minutes for 4,400, both guard spots. We get him 22% of the time, gently above the field, a little bit of a position there. At 45 on DraftKings, he's a 5.01 value, and we didn't get there at all. Just a different play across sites as far as how that fits into those guard positions. That's another interesting one, the way that value is playing across sites. Caruso, a mix and match play on FanDuel at best, 6%. I don't think we need any of that. That's another weird spot. 4,400, small forward only. Why would that have come up? Small forward's got to be really weird and thin on FanDuel today. Let's get the forwards and the centers on the board. I actually want to do that real quick. I just want to see small forward on FanDuel because these distributions are weird. $41% going there. Everybody's got the multi-position. Maybe it's just so much multi-position that it's broadening out the distribution. 7, 8. Like, I don't really. PJ at 6,900 with a 4.84 value score came up at 16%. Hard undercut to the field. Kispert at 46, small forward only. 4.78 value score. Came up the same 16%, level with the field. But that's a bit of an offset. You would think you would have had a little bit more going through PJ. Just some weird distributions. I'm curious to see how this comes up when I rerun it. Crunching down some minutes and rates as we approach lock. Finding more values. Could tighten this up a little bit on FanDuel. But the small forward position is interesting on FanDuel today. Anyway. Hit the like if you get a chance. It's a little thumbs up. It's like down there. I know we go by, I say like every time, and maybe people are just like looking for the word like. It's represented by a thumbs up. We go on pictographs here on the internet. So hit that little thumbs up if you get a chance. If you are not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. It takes you all of 1/10 of a second, and then just make sure notifications aren't on so that I'm not bothering you every time I schedule a show or anything. But if you get the chance, I think we're 125 shy of 1,000 people. So hit the subscribe button and then go tell 2 friends to subscribe to the channel and do the same thing. Costs them nothing. If you're ever on YouTube and you're showing somebody a video on YouTube and you're on their computer, go like, all right, wasn't that funny when that guy fell off that ladder? Now jump over to my friend's channel and just subscribe to it real quick. Help him out. Does actually help if we get to 1,000. And, honestly, come on. We ought to be at 1,000 by now. Looks like Luke is going to play. Yeah, Mike, he's probable. I've been expecting him. It was actually funny over the weekend. Apparently ESPN flexed that Saturday Lakers game onto the ESPN afternoon schedule because Luka was originally saying the word was he was going to debut that in that Saturday game. So ESPN had the right to flex it, and they did. To do that, they had to move I think it was the Duke game that afternoon. It was 2 hours later, but they had to ask Duke, can you delay the start of your game by a half hour to accommodate our TV schedule because we're flexing Lakers in? And then neither Luka nor LeBron played in that Lakers game on Saturday. Ouch. That's a multi-million-dollar mistake. But yeah, we're supposed to get him today. Zivon, what's going on, buddy? Just saw your message. Appreciate you. Good to see you. Power says, for me, I win more on FanDuel, and I still think DK is better with the pricing. Yeah, look, honestly, they both miss. They both come and go. Javier says, missed the last 10 minutes of the show because my son got hit by a train toy. Oh, okay. Except he didn't. My wife just listened to her inbox message from last week. Oh, geez. All right. So yeah, as somebody in the chat mentioned, yeah, glad that it was a toy train. Number one, but that's hilarious that your wife just heard the message from last week and you guys rushed over there. Sorry you had to go rush over there and get probably panicked about it, but that's funny that it was from last week. Hopefully the young fella's okay. So let's see on our Bobby Portis watch. Radically different prices across sites. You want to talk about not getting a price right? $6,300 for Bobby Portis today. I know he didn't start in his last game, but he still played 30 minutes. Put up a 41.1. I've got him projected for 32. We might see him start, even if he doesn't. Like I said, it's just so likely that he plays 30-plus minutes that I don't think this is a downgraded Bobby Portis spot. We didn't get a ton of them on FanDuel because they've got him up at 85. He's been playing like that $8,500 player like he always does when he gets these opportunities. So this is the correct price to me. $6,300 is super, super cheap. It's putting him at a 6.36 value. I could take those. Let's see. We go to you have to remember to unwind this. That puts him at he's at a 5.68 value score at that price if I take 4 minutes away and put him at 28 minutes. If anybody wants to get panicky about whether he starts or not. Would he come up at 93% and that high above the field? No, probably not. He'd probably be more like these guys. You know, this is a 5.8 value score that we got 45% of the time. So figure he's somewhere in between Nick Smith, Kyle Kuzma distributions here. And that's if you take 4 full minutes away, which I think is not realistic. So Bobby Portis, fire away, regardless of whether he starts or plays off the bench on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I do think you could grab a few more shares. Probably going to be a little bit oddly contrarian. Or maybe, I'm actually kind of torn on that. Going by the ownership projections, it would be a little bit contrarian to grab a few additional shares. You'd just be pushing them back toward the field as far as our full distributions go. But he'd be way, way more popular under a lot of other circumstances on FanDuel. But you have to account for something of a blind, group of public that would just click him into lineups knowing that he's playing. So I don't know how opportunistic you can be about that number on FanDuel. In the raw form, I would want a little bit more than just 4%. If I run 10 lineups, do I want him in? Or if I run 20 lineups, do I want him in just one? I think I would have a little bit more. Boncaro coming up like a monster, 54% of the time on FanDuel in our top 150 lineups, way above the field over there. On DraftKings, it's closer to the field, 45% exposed, still a lot of them, still above the field, but he's more highly owned at 83 on DK, power forward only, than he is at the same price on FanDuel, power forward and small forward eligible. I'm happy to take more shares. For the season, we're at 1.18, but he's one of the true, well over 30%, well over 30% usage guys on the board. The numbers haven't been where we want them since he's come back. 33 minutes, 33.7 minutes in his most recent game, with playing under a point per minute, 32.4 FanDuel points. But we know what the upside on this player looks like. We know that it's a good matchup for them going up against Atlanta here. So I'm going to continue to go back to that Paulo play. And worst case, knowing that I'm going to continue going to it, if he busts tonight, the price probably goes down. So we get him even cheaper next time around. Nick Smith, we talked about when we were looking at guards. Kuzma, so the price did go up. It went to 53 on DraftKings. That puts him at a 5.6 value. We're getting him 38% of the time. That's below the field. Field's still excited about Kyle Kuzma. I don't know that I love it. I think I'm pretty happy to be at hard undercut to the field at 13%. FanDuel, pretty hard undercut to the field at 38% on DraftKings. And honestly, if you're taking that big an undercut, and you want to take a larger one, go 25% and just spend those shares elsewhere, I think it's fine. If you get no Dame, then I think this situation changes because there will be more for Kuzma to do. So I think you could justify a per minute uptick. But right now, I'm happy to have a few shares, but I don't want to get too excited even at that DraftKings price. Much, much better option on DraftKings, though. On FanDuel at 62, I'm happy to have less than 10%, honestly. If I'm already making the undercut to the field, take it a little further. It's just not a great per minute player. He was much better last year at 1.15. That was on nearly 30% usage. This year, overall, obviously, most of this not with the Bucks. but was down to 25.7% usage, was down to 0.94 FanDuel points per minute, 0.98 DraftKings points per minute. Put up less than that in his most recent game, 36.5 minutes of 33-1. I gave him credit for his 0.99. It's right where I've got him. This ran against higher ownership than a higher projection. The ownership is based on a higher projection than what I've got. Do with that information what you will. In the projections that this ran against, Kuzma's in more than 50% of DraftKings lineups. I think I'm all right with the 35 kind of range. Could be Travis is in on Paulo, likes Franz in that game as well, Goga as well. Definitely Paulo. Franz has got to be around here somewhere. He's right here. So big yes to Franz. Even more enthusiastic about Paulo. And then Goga's the one I'm not sure where he's going to come up. Where is he? I don't see him. Why would he not come up? I put centers on the board, didn't I? Oh, I didn't. My bad. All right, some more guys to talk about. Yeah, he's still not really getting there. We did get him 16. All right, 16% FanDuel. Yes on FanDuel for Goga, at least to a degree, Trav, but on DraftKings, no. Probably the power forward eligibility that's getting him there on the FanDuel slate. 5,300, but power forward eligible on FanDuel. 5,000 center only on DraftKings. We only got him once. I do think there's any given slate upside for Goga, but with more of the front court available, like the opportunity for him to really, really pop is more limited. But yeah, as you're saying, as a low-owned dart is fine. Any given share of Goga is perfectly fine. Oh, did I put those Portis minutes back? There we go. Trav, you mentioning in the chat right now, just going to remind me to do something else with the positional filtering there, reminded me that I had to go to the projections file and give Portis those minutes back, so thank you. Otherwise, I would have been losing it later on, trying to figure out why his projection had gone down. All right, let's see. What did we miss centers-wise? So this is a biggie. 3,900 for Nurk. I have really little idea of what that's actually going to look like. I gave him 22. He's averaged 23-7 in 25 games for the year. Obviously, most of it not with Charlotte. Really skeptical if we get 22. It might be 18. It could be 16. It could also be like 28. The other one, let's do this. So here's how I split it. 22, 22, and then 2 minutes going to Taj. They could split this any given way. Diabate yesterday played 7.1. Taj played 19.8. And then you can mix in the salons and they could just go small. So it's really murky around this Nurk play on DraftKings. On FanDuel, you just don't have to worry about this situation because none of these guys are coming up outside of Miles Bridges who you can just take or leave. It doesn't matter on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, with that $3,900 price on Nurk, he's 55 on FanDuel. Both of these prices are wrong. This one's high, this one's low. Nurk is a very good per minute player when he's out there. It really comes down to time. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Nurk just hasn't been playing all that much this season, so I can't, in good conscience, take him to like 28. And we could see one of these stupid, Taj starts, plays 12 minutes, 2 6-minute stints, but starts the game and makes everything even more murky. If I had to guess, I'm going to say Diabate ends up being the starter going up. Nurk plays 18 off the bench, goes down in the projection. That's just kind of the inkling that I've got. That's why I want to call out how fragile that Nurk play is at 39. Could really go south in a hurry. This is one where you knock that down to, you take 4 minutes away from Nurk, same experiment we ran on Portis, right? Take 4 minutes away from Nurk, and he's going to go down to a 5.06 value. Remember, we want 5.5 here, and look how that compares to so many other guys going down this board. So those 4 minutes are absolutely critical for Jusuf Nurkic. If you see him dip to even 20, he's more playable at 20, but he becomes a problem at 18. So this could go away in a hurry. But right now, the way it looks, or the way I have it projected, and they're just kind of middled it like I showed you, he's looking good. Kuzma, we talked about, cheap on DraftKings. Jokic, love it. 22% on DraftKings, level with the field. 20% on FanDuel, a little bit above the field. Give me more. If you can carry more Jokic than this, take more. That said, you don't want to necessarily do it at the expense of like completely cheapening another spot in every lineup that you build. But Jokic looks tremendous today. He's playing the season at 1.8 something, or 1.81 DraftKings, 1.79 FanDuel. I've got him right in that territory today. Nobody on Portland's going to stop him. Franz, again, 21% below the field on DraftKings for 85, small forward only. We've got him small forward and power forward on FanDuel still. 32% exposed over there. Like him a little bit better for the 86 on FanDuel with that multi-position. He's played the season at 1.30. There's a little bit of back and forth. Him, Paulo, Goga, got to get it figured out as far as how those rates are going to ultimately land once Paulo comes back to full form and his usual production. But right now, Franz looks every bit the strong option. 38 minutes last time out, 54.9 FanDuel points. That's right on value. Nas at 69 on DraftKings, more interesting, I think, than on FanDuel, but we actually got less of them. That's an oddity. I think that's probably a product of some of these Nurk shares for one. Well, maybe not, because of that price. Maybe, you know what it is? It's the Portis shares. 63 for Portis at power forward center. That's taking away all of those Nas opportunities. So if you take Portis down a little, you would almost directly get more Nas. It would be at the expense of something else because he's 600 more than Portis. But I do think that's why you're coming up light on Nas, because it's not like it's a bad play. 5.34, close enough to the value mark, and we know what the ceiling looks like. We know he's a 1.05 per minute guy with plenty of opportunity here. So I don't mind the Nas play at 69. On FanDuel at 76, we actually got more of them. He's center and power forward eligible, just a 4.83 value, but we're kind of light on big man values on FanDuel. We've got 5.4 for Gafford. We've got 5.24 for Paulo, and then everybody else is technically below our value threshold on the FanDuel slate. So that's kind of interesting. That's resulting in plenty of Jokic coming up at his 4.95. It's resulting in a good amount of Franz, and it's resulting in a fair amount of Nas. And being above the field on a player like that, I'm happy to have that position. If the field's, call it like 20% there, and I've got a little bit of an edge on the Nas ceiling game, even against Cleveland, and this does account for matchup, this does account for all of it, it looks like a good enough spot. Aaron Gordon, player that I like, spot that on FanDuel can't really justify at 57 right now. Power forward only. On DraftKings for 51, power forward and center, we get a lot more of them. 5.42 value with easy upside beyond that. I like the Aaron Gordon play on the DraftKings slate. We're level with the field at, We're level with the field at 17%. If you wanted to push this one up to a plus play 2025, I don't think it's too big a mistake. That's a low price for Aaron Gordon. And you could easily do it at the expense of a few more of these Kuzma shares. If you're taking out some of those Kuzmas and you want them, 30%, still have a ton, but be under the field even more significantly, not a bad investment to put them into a similarly priced Aaron Gordon option. Not a bad investment to put them into similarly priced Nas. It's another guy that you could pivot to Nas. Jalen Williams, we're with no Y. We're 12% and above the field on FanDuel, 16% level with the field on DraftKings. Love to have it. Actually, I wouldn't mind a little bit more on the DraftKings slate. It's another guy being impacted on just there's only so many power forward and small forward spots that are open. He's getting into plenty of them. He looks absolutely fantastic for 79. 5.23 value is good enough for me. 1.23 per minute player tells me he's got plenty of upside. And again, they should just absolutely wax that Pelican squad. So plenty of Jalen, plenty of SGA, and then mix and match guys the rest of the way down for OKC. Outside of maybe Hartenstein. Where's he coming up? I don't see him. Nope, no Hartenstein. 68 on DraftKings. He's a 5+ value over there. We didn't get him. 77 on FanDuel. This is another one. See, this is what I'm talking about when I say that DraftKings prices this. Yeah, he didn't come up, and he doesn't have public ownership. But that's a $900 price difference on a guy who should absolutely be priced at 77 or thereabouts. Hartenstein's played this year at 1.24 on FanDuel, 1.22 per minute on DraftKings. Put him in at 6,800 in a, Chet's back, but it's not like he's stealing all his minutes. 1.22. And here's a center right here for 74, Danny Gafford, who's playing at 1.24. So they've got a $600 gap between those two players. Does that make sense? This is what I'm talking about when I say that I think FanDuel's pricing is a little bit closer to the mark. But you can cherry pick examples all day, obviously. But I am the one in control of the mouse, so you're going to look at every example I want to show you. Prove my point. Doug's here. Doug says they've been low on Fox every day since the trade. Das Industry. Doug speaking German in the chat. DFS industry. Super low on Fox's projections again today. Does that include me? I know I don't have them going through the roof. Foxy's played this season at 117 on FanDuel, 119 on DraftKings, and I have him today at 1.20. So technically, I gave him 100th of a point per minute. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it's necessarily light. I got him at a 40-point projection. It's a great spot against Washington. That's the thing about that one where you could argue for more. Convincing myself in my head silently as I'm looking at this. I probably could give him a little bit more, not just because Doug said so, but I do think that Doug is actually right that maybe I do have him a little light. Because I was thinking of it when I was just spot checking all the players. I pulled him up and I thought about it more in terms of the new spot, and I don't know that I fully accounted for the matchup in that one. The model did. But the model, it's the compound factor of the new spot or the new team and the spot. So I'm going to put a little flag on him. I'm going to kick that around. It's going to be a matter of a point and a half. We got him basically not at all on FanDuel for 9. Where you might see him go up is on DraftKings. 8,300. This is another one. Darren Fox, he's a $9,000 player. 119 per minute on DraftKings, 117 per minute on FanDuel. I will point out that that's actually lower than the Hartenstein per minute projection, but same player. Or, I mean, different position. How did I come out with same player when I meant different position? Yeah. You'll get a little bit more of Fox if we give him a minor uptick here. if I go to, it's probably going to be right there, 2.5. If I give him the 5/100ths of a point that I might have otherwise in this situation, had I thought it through a little bit better, it would give him 42.4. So it goes up to a 5.12 value. You would definitely see a little bit more of him at that uptick. I don't know that I would take him much beyond that, Doug. But I do think there's a good reason to make the argument that he deserves a little bit more than I was initially giving him. You could make the same argument for Wemby, but I do have that on Wemby via the model already because there's no new situation outside of Fox joining the team here. But you could give him a little bit of a nudge for this very, very aggressively good game environment. Back to where we were. 5:23 already. Going to wind this down in the next couple of minutes and we'll get on top of updates. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground as far as a lot of players on this slate, and we've talked about a bunch of them. Who else? Jared Allen, at worst, a mix and match guy across sites. It's just that Minnesota-Cleveland fist fight that we're going to see here. I don't know that it's really shooting anybody out the top of it, but Allen at 6,400 on DraftKings at least is somebody to keep in mind for some pivot shares. We got him 16%, a little bit lighter than the field. It's not the same situation as we saw with Allen the other day where he was owned in the low single digits. But I do think that's a justifiable position to at least have this, 15, 16%. And if you took him up to the field, I don't think you're making a mistake. He's a good enough per minute player. Carlo Makovic should just have a lot to do. 4,400. I gave him 24 minutes in this spot. Played just 16 and a half the last time out, 13 fantasy points. But overall for the year, 0.95 per minute in his 12 minutes per night in his 14 games. 0.88 per minute on DraftKings. Just very cheap and should have, again, with just everybody out for New Orleans, should have at least a decent little amount of run. He suffers from the same thing that everybody on the New Orleans side of that one is going to, though, is just the matchup against OKC. And if you think about it, for a young and inexperienced player, throwing him into that grinder is not ideal. So out of everybody, he's not exactly my favorite from among the values. But I think he's a functional rotational piece. If you get a couple shares of $3,900 him instead of a couple shares of $3,900 Nurk with a lot of fragility on that, sure. If you get Nurk confirmed starting or something, then you go the other way. Horford, mix and match right now, but could end up coming up a little bit more interesting than this. He is very, very cheap on DraftKings, $3,900. Granted, he's only playing at 0.78 this year and limited veteran-style minutes for old man Al at this point in his life, but never a problem. And in a situation where Boston gets both their stars out, there will definitely be more for Al to do. Because Sean George is active, he doesn't really look like a priority on either site, but playable on both. 5,000 both forward spots on FanDuel, he's fine. We got more for the 4,300 on DraftKings, another offset price. 0.74 per minute. This one, I would argue that DK is probably correct in the price, but FanDuel's accounting for the reconfigured opportunity for him, I think, in Washington. 30 minutes, doesn't really look all that interesting. Gafford is at worst playable on DraftKings. We got him 10% of the time for the 74 that I mentioned before, but he's more of a rotational piece, and we're below the field there. On FanDuel, Danny Gafford's coming up like crazy. He's 7,500 on the FanDuel slate, single center spot, 5.4 on the value scale. Going to have tons and tons to have to do here. He's going to be playing this role for the foreseeable future now. 37.3 FanDuel points in 26 minutes the last time out. In 31, we have a significant trajectory for more, 1.30 per minute. Trent we talked about. Trey we talked about. Draymond, interesting option. 5%. I think you could get a little bit more than that on DraftKings. He's a 5.29 value. That's not a bad value score that we're just not getting all that much exposure to. Again, that's kind of a product of just how much drives through those other shares. But that makes Draymond an interesting enough, rotational piece that you can cycle through some lineups at relatively low ownership. About a point per minute this season. The minutes are up a little bit. He's averaged 28 for the year. He played 32 in the last one, 30 plus in the last couple. Brown, we talked about. MPJ, assuming he plays, mix and match piece on either site, not really all that appealing. Mix and match shares of all of Devin Vassell, DeMar DeRozan, Rashawn Holmes is not coming up all that much. That's one that's been a buzzy guy of late. FanDuel's got him priced up at 56 for the new role. DraftKings still at 49, puts him at a 5.26 value score. Under the field at 4%. A few additional shares is fine. And if we lose the Nurk play, for example, or if we lose value in some of these guys, then you probably end up with more Rashawn Holmes in your pocket just by virtue of where that's priced. But right now, I think he's just that low because of the Nurk shares. I think you still end up below the field, though. Ayton mix and match on either site. Kamara, I think we talked about during guards. Looking good on the FanDuel board at 58. Not so much on DraftKings at 61. And then everybody down in this range on DK, including a handful of pretty decent players here. Zion, Bam, PJ, Okongwu, Jason Tatum, all mix and match, onesie twosie type shares. Everybody below the field, but the field's not running away with shares of any of those guys. Everybody in that group is playable. Zach LaVine's also in that group. Rudy Gobert's on the fringes of that group, let's be honest with each other. But any one of those guys is playable. On FanDuel, it's a little bit more specific. We got 16%, but below the field on PJ. We got 11%, but well below the field on Zach LaVine. LaVine for 73, looking a little better site to site on the FanDuel side, closer to the value mark on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings for the higher price. But not a critical play. Again, it's the same thing with all the Kings. They all look good minutes-wise, but they're all right about the right numbers as far as their price against their rates go, and it just comes out flat unless somebody's missing. And then minor exposure to Zion, minor exposure to Bam. Either of those guys is fine, and taking one, if you want to take a little bit of a position on either one of those guys, not necessarily a mistake since they're both single digits. On DraftKings, you could get away with it as well. Not completely nuts to decide I want a little bit of Zion on a day where there's nobody else on his team. But he's playing OKC. Man, if we could get this game against if this was against Washington, Zion would be through the roof. Nicky Claxton, a couple shares on FanDuel's fine. A couple shares on DraftKings. Brolo, same story. 10% of Gobert on FanDuel and 1% on DraftKings. And then other outliers, Goga. We talked about Goga. But again, FanDuel, yes, because of the power forward, almost definitely. Or that's almost definitely why we're getting him, I mean. 16% exposed, level with the field at a 4.95 value. We're close to the mark with Goga on FanDuel. And no positional conflict with anybody that's more interesting. So I think you can get him there. DraftKings just doesn't matter. We got a little bit of Bridges. At 84 on FanDuel, 88 on DraftKings, he didn't come up at all. DraftKings has him priced up for this situation they've been playing in, which is not incorrect. I'll give DraftKings the nod on that one. They probably did the better price. He's been playing at 114 FanDuel, 118 DraftKings this season. Good year out of Miles Bridges. Jimmy, I think you can get a few shares if you want him. He's not a bad option. He's just not coming up because there's so many good options. But 1.3% on FanDuel, you got a couple shares at 79, both forward spots, 78, both forward spots. We didn't happen to get him on DraftKings, but if you rerun the sim a couple times, you probably would. Nothing really stands out. It's just an is who he is spot, but who he is still a effective NBA player at these prices. So I think you could get a game out of Jimmy under the right circumstances. Hartenstein not coming up. KP, this is one to watch, especially on DK where he's only 78. If you get no Jaylen Brown and no Jason Tatum, that Porzingis play gets a whole hell of a lot more interesting. Still not a great game environment, Boston and Miami, but I think KP at least would go up into like this kind of territory. Maybe the 10, 12 kind of range and more like gently under the field. I think that's where he would land. 10% of Taurean Prince. Take him or leave him. Not really exciting there. I would rather have so many other guys from Milwaukee, including Gary Trent. Where was Trent? Yeah, give me those 6% of Gary Trent at 42 and give me these 10% of Taurean Prince, and I'll find $200 per share to get to Gary Trent instead. Just more opportunity there with Trent. They play around similar rates this year, 0.66 versus 0.69, but Trent's going to give me more shots, going to give me more opportunities, going to just touch the ball more. And I have a little bit of history that suggests he's a better player when he does that. So every single time I would prefer Gary Trent in that situation. But we are getting a chunk of Taurean Prince as well. That price difference, that $200, seems like it's coming up a little bit crucial. Tyler Hero out. Well, that's a new one. Ware and Wiggins night. Yeah, Andrew Wiggins on that team now. That could drive him up. We'll see what that ends up looking like. And then Bam, obviously, I think is going to get a little bit more interesting, just with more to do. Where's the semi-tricky one? I don't think it actually is. I think it's just happenstance that's resulted in the last 2 days being lighter minutes. We were getting our 30-plus pretty firmly, and he played 4 pretty distinct stints in that 26 minutes in their most recent game. When you look at it, it looks like normal run, and it just came up a little bit short of the mark when it all added up in the end. I think we're fine with our 30 minutes on Kel'el Ware. So, yeah, he should probably look pretty good in a reconfiguration of Miami. But, yeah, now you got to factor in for Bam. It's the no Jimmy and no Hero situation. Wiggins comes in and probably accounts for what's Butler's usage. Not that we've had Jimmy in a lot of recent games. Yeah, Wiggins 2% higher usage rate. So you could probably just call it Wiggins a close enough approximation to Jimmy Butler and what he would have been doing in this situation, where if you leave Jimmy in when you go to Wowie, you could probably get a correct-ish kind of a rate for Bam. But there should be an uptick for Bam rate-wise. I think where we're probably secure, as I was saying, in the 30 minutes. It might be more 28 to 30, but I think we're okay there. 65 is not a bad price on DraftKings for Wiggins. He's got the multi-position for 67 on FanDuel. The thing about it is, no, I've got a little room there. Because he came up at a bit of a haircut from his 1.02 by virtue of the matchup. So I've got a little room to push him back the other way, and maybe he comes in more around the point per minute mark. Right now I've got him at just 0.95. Minor difference, but there's a little bit of room there to push Wiggins up the ladder if need be. And then, what are we going to see? Probably a little bit of an uptick for Terry Rozier getting into the 30-minute range. A little bit of an uptick for Dunk getting into the 20, 26-minute range, but minor option as far as the per-minute marks. And then maybe a little bit more for Pele Larson, but I don't know that matters. Maybe at min price on DK it becomes a little bit more interesting. You see them do something weird, which the Heat are perfectly capable of doing, like him starting or something. That would obviously have a massive impact at 3,000, but I don't foresee that. I've got him at 10 minutes right now, and he was completely irrelevant for 3,000. If we put him at 12, 14, I don't think it's going to matter. They've also got Slow-Mo on this team now. That could get him involved a little bit more than I was expecting. So there's all sorts of different directions this could go because they've got Noemi Akez. There's several other guys out. So I just hate this Miami team pretty much every day. It's just, yeah, especially going up against Boston. I really don't like that spot. I don't like the way they move minutes around. It's like the worst team to have some question marks with. That also makes a lot of sense what Doug's pointing out in the chat. Lots of people sitting from Miami makes you think that at least one of Tatum and Brown will be out. If I'm not mistaken, the Vegas line kind of looked that way as well. So wouldn't shock me if one or both of those guys are out. And then just kind of, if they don't go especially, everybody gets a little float in that game. It just becomes a looser overall game. So that's our board for right now. Yeah, and IMAC is out, as Swoosh says. See Kuzma with a projection as high as 35. You think it may be a tad low, says Trav. Maybe. Let's see. We're at 29. He's played at 0.98. What did I say before? I gave him 0.95, I think. 0.99, excuse me. I've got him right on the mark. How many minutes is that against, Trev? Is that against 32 minutes? The minutes matter there. I wouldn't expect I've got him at a radically different rate projection. But I've got him right on his season-long minutes average of 30. And just in the one that I've got on my screen here, it looks like the place where the ownership comes from has him with 4 additional minutes. That's why he's so much more highly owned in their ownership projections. Did go 36 in the last game. I mean, there's justification for having him up. $32-33. Yeah. So if you give him 32, I think it'll put him, let's see. Yeah, 32 gives him right around a point per minute and 32 DraftKings points, and then you could fudge the minutes one way or the other, or the rate a little bit. And then if you take him all the way to 34, that'll get him to the 35 fantasy points that you're seeing. So it just depends where the minutes go. Seems like there's some consensus that he's going to play a little bit more. So in the next update I do, I'll probably give him that 32 anyway. Put a little note on him. But yeah, that's where anytime you see a big gap in projection one site to another, whether it's mine, Awesemo, whoever, definitely look at what the minutes are as the first thing. Because odds are, and it's the way that this works, if you somehow, came down from on high and said, tonight, everybody will be playing exactly at their rate. Everybody will be playing exactly these minutes. Every single site should have the exact same projection. It's just how this works. So with obviously ridiculous variability, it comes down very often to just a minute, 2 minutes difference from site to site can create the perception of, wow, these guys have them really different tonight, where it's really just a matter of saying, like, I think he plays 2 fewer minutes, but is the exact same guy as they think he is in 2 more minutes. But I probably will take him up to at least 32. I don't know I get him to 34, but 32 is at least reasonable. Blaine coming in. Blaine from Ace Mind. Give Blaine a little bit of love in the chat. One of the creators of acemind.io, our partner site for sims and optimizations, where all our good sims run. 8 and night on FanDuel. That was not one that I was necessarily looking at. Let's see where he came up. Could be another one where it's a bit of a difference in projections. I've got him at just 2% exposure in the top 150. Actually got him a little bit more on DraftKings at 67. 72 on FanDuel. Do you love the idea of DeAndre Ayton going into the Mile High City, playing at altitude, running back and forth, a little bit winded? I got him at 32 minutes. I don't know that I'm there. In a contrarian sense, sure. Don't know that I'm there otherwise. Could be Travis uses the Ace Mind Sims. Shout out Ace Mind. Having a great time using your simulations. Great product. I know they've got basketball, they've got baseball, they've got football. If you use promo code RotoScouts all in caps, still gets you 20% off your first month over there. Looks like the MLB Sims are loaded up already. So right now I'm looking at it. NFL is still there, but obviously coming off the board soon. But definitely all you need for NFL. NBA, hot and heavy. MLB, tennis. I'm assuming that's what 10 stands for. PGA and MMA. Not bad. Plenty of bang for your buck. And Blaine's always around for quick customer support responses. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to wrap us up. Blaine is a sharp guy there, though. I'll say that. He does a lot of winning with their sim products as well. And if their sims are coming up DeAndre Ayton, maybe I'll give him a little bit of a nudge. Definitely not a bad call out as at least, again, a differentiated play at the end of the night. With that in mind, you guys, let me punch out of here. Thank you so much for hanging out. Hit the like button. Check out rotoscouts.com. Everything's under $1 a day for access to all of the major sports all at once. No per sport, no nonsense, no uptick in price next month after this one expires. Always under $1 a day. So check out Rotoscouts. Check out acemind.io. Blaine's saying we should have some cool stuff for MLB. Best ball projections soon. Some sim and UI updates. Awesome. Can't wait. Looking forward to baseball. Good luck out there tonight, guys. Somebody go win something. Share it when you do. Screenshots make me happy. So share those, and we'll be back for more tomorrow. See ya.